Welcome everyone, it's Chober here, your esports caster, producer, and translator, and in today's matchup, I enter Halo Campaign Evolved. Shockingly, my first time ever playing a Halo campaign. Immediately, I'm blown away by the graphics, taking it all in, talking about how incredible it must have been to explore this setting for the first time back in 2001. There's not much time to dawdle though, as I pick up the updated arsenal of weapons available to fight back the Covenant, and holy cow, look at this Needler, it's so shiny! Now, it's not the cleanest fight by any means. The guns feel great, the graphics are amazing, but the presentation has a few hollow moments. Still, it's an honest, straightforward FPS journey, and after just about 13 hours, I snatch victory from the main campaign and the 3 new extra missions, marking my first ever completed Halo campaign. This is my review. There's one thing to note before diving in deeper, and that's the fact that this was stated to be a remake. Now, some of you might have remake fatigue with all the remakes and remasters coming out in recent years, but for someone like me that grew up with a limited scope of platforms and games, it's an amazing way to experience beloved IPs in modern times. Final Fantasy VII Remake was what got me to play the original Final Fantasy VII game all the way through Final Fantasy XIV, and while that definitely is the golden standard of remakes, I think it also really helps define the difference between a remake and a remaster. The reason this is important is because it means it's more than just a new coat of paint and maybe some quality of life features, or at least it should be. Obviously, this game, Halo Campaign Evolved, is built up fresh in Unreal Engine 5, so that alone could qualify it to be a remake, but I'll also be looking at this as a fresh new release since to me, that's what a remake should be, a brand new game for those new to the IP, and an homage for any original fans. To be fair, the graphics are single-handedly deserving of that moniker. I mean, look at this, it's vibrant, it's shiny, it's fresh. The older Halos definitely had a slightly cartoon look to their grittier geometry, though perhaps that's just the red versus blue cultural impact. And I mean that in a good way. It was a nice balance of tone. The new graphics definitely provide a much smoother presentation of all the objects, but it still keeps that sci-fi fantasy vibe through its visuals. I really think the Needler is one of the best examples to showcase this, and perhaps even how the grunts still look silly while being much more realistic. It doesn't go too far in either direction of taking itself too seriously, nor trying too hard to mimic the old feel. The graphics work overtime to really sell each different biome as well, though the pacing is something we'll come back to later. Technically speaking, the fidelity was fine. I don't have the strongest PC, but with a Radeon RX 9060 XT and some of the other specs that will be listed on the screen right now, while streaming to 3 different platforms and recording locally, I was able to mostly maintain a 70 FPS frame rate on medium settings, and I was happy enough with how it looked. Now, there were notable frame drops in more open battles or even crowded ones, but the good news is that it wasn't a fluctuation, but rather a drop that tried to maintain consistency right around 50 FPS. So yes, it was noticeable at first, but perfectly playable as it wasn't constantly going up or down, and this didn't happen too often. Maybe I'm giving too much credit here, but honestly, if I wasn't streaming, I don't think I'd even remember it that much to comment on it, let alone maybe it wouldn't have even happened. Of course, the gameplay played a big part in that, keeping me engaged and focusing on the weapons more than anything. There's a steady flow of aliens to fight off, and no shortage of weapons to use against them. A lot of times you'll feel like the super soldier you're meant to be, clearing rooms full of aliens, but other times you'll feel the fear of a space war, needing to fight for survival against hordes of enemies. If you like FPS games, you get what you see. Good to great gunplay, variety of weapons, some big booms with explosives. Unfortunately, the game didn't do much in terms of immersion through the gameplay though. Other than 1 or 2 very crucial moments of the campaign, I was never quite sure if I was supposed to feel unstoppable or cowering in fear. You could argue that the whole point of the campaign is to make you feel torn on that front, but I think the delivery falls a bit short if I'm too busy being annoyed at the fact and eventually feeling neither. Of course, this won't matter much if you're just here to blast some bugs, because moment to moment, the fights are satisfying. It should also be noted that I played the game on heroic difficulty with a Steam controller on PC. I didn't really feel the need to utilize any of the Steam controller exclusive features, but it worked fine as is. I did try a mission or 2 on keyboard and mouse immediately after seeing the ending, and as someone who usually plays FPSs primarily on keyboard and mouse, the KBM controls did feel way better on PC. The controller was fine, but the aim assist felt fairly inconsistent at times, which created a slight annoyance since sometimes I had to lean into it, and then other times I had to actually fight against it. All in all, it's good news that both control schemes seem to be solid choices. There's not much to say about the story. Viewers tell me that most of it was one-to-one with the original, with some extra exposition or extended cutscenes. However, I think this attempt to keep it relatively the same to the original holds the remake back just a few steps. Now, it's tricky to do a good remake, especially if the intention is to bring in a newer generation of fans, but you have to take the risk to make it a new game more than anything. The honest take is that it seems as if the devs were caught in no man's land, unsure of which way to lean, eventually landing on decisions that became too neutral to hit home. At least for new players like me. Perhaps it actually still landed fairly well for the OG fans. No, I'm not talking about the technical aspects of the story presentation. I think the cutscenes were beautiful, and personally, as someone who didn't play the original, I thought the voice acting was fine. Some of it was a little over the top, but I mean, the story is quite over the top to begin with, so it didn't really bother me too much. In fact, I enjoyed most of it, and I would say that the voices did let me get a little bit more attached or learn more about each character. But overall, whether it's the editing of the scenes, whether it's how it's connected into the campaign, there was just a little bit missing that made it feel a lot more continuous and immersive. And this extends to the technical aspects as well. Take the health system, for instance. In the original, I've learned you needed to find health packs to refill your health, but the shield would charge up automatically after you stayed out of battle for a few seconds. I can totally see why you wanted to move away from that in modern times. It may seem like friction that's gone out of fashion. Personally, I think it would have still been fine, but regardless of whether it would have been good or not, the new system now has no distinction between shield or health. Both regenerate once out of combat for a set amount of time. It's just one small bar of health and then one larger bar that has a cooler sound when it starts to regen. Things like this may seem like it's a non-issue, and while it doesn't negatively impact the gameplay significantly, it makes it forgettable. What this takes away is the sound and visuals of the shield recharge meaning something. To get a small comparison, I went back and played the first couple missions in the Master Chief Collection, and instantly I'm relying on the shield sound, and conceptually I'm thinking, thank goodness I have an energy shield. It's little things like this. The music and ambient sound effects are another part where much of it seems to copy the original, except the original also left much more to imagination simply due to the technical limitations at the time. So silence had a much bigger impact alongside how the graphics and visuals were presented. The pacing for the original also seemed slower, more deliberate. I'm not sure if that's simply the addition of sprint affecting my view on the remake, or if the number of enemies and weapon balance adds onto it, but the remake doesn't make it too apparent that it should be a slower, more calculated game. In Campaign Evolved, a lot of times the graphics, my movement, the enemies, all feel like there should be so much more energy, but the silence is almost too jarring that it takes me out of the immersion a bit. There are also a few added portions of the game that seem a bit like an afterthought. The biggest offender is at the very end, in my opinion, but I won't go into details due to potential spoilers for those who haven't played. Now, these moments aren't terrible, but they didn't add much, which sometimes almost ends up as a bit of a negative. Let it be known that I am not talking about the 3 extra missions that were newly designed for the remake. Those play quite differently, with the level designs very clearly being inspired by arena FPS gameplay, lending themselves more to be neat little challenge levels with a playground of weapons. I enjoyed them for what they were, though it didn't seem like it added much to the story, even for OG fans that were watching the gameplay. In the end, Halo Campaign Evolved is a darn fun FPS campaign. It does a great job of recreating the initial awe factor for newer fans like me in the modern day, and it's a solid start for perhaps an entire relaunch of the series if Easter eggs and rumors are to be believed. I just wish they were a bit bolder with the idea of a remake. Being caught in the middle of trying to stay too true to the original while redesigning a modern FPS definitely left a few parts lacking, which makes it hard to justify the full price. And yes, this is being priced at around $70 USD on Steam. But if you're an FPS fan, you'll have a blast with it, and playtime isn't too much of a factor since there is plenty of replayability with the different difficulties and skulls that will add challenge factors. Perhaps the most important part is, the core gunplay and environments are fantastic, and that's a great base to build future titles upon. Now, the part that everyone's here for, my final scores on each aspect with the overall rating. Do keep in mind that I tend to be pretty stingy with my scores in general, so you can see what each score range would mean right here on the screen. With a mix of great and decent grades across each aspect, Halo Campaign Evolved is a solid FPS campaign. And that's where I'm gonna leave it. If you had a chance to play the game, let me know what you thought down below in the comments. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more reviews and breakdowns of various games and esports. That's going to be it for now. So everyone, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.
Now would be a very good time to leave.
Punch it.
Ah, sir.